Welcome back to Epic Genealogy. I'm Mark in Gilbert, Arizona. I want to do a short history on the Mayflower and why we celebrate Thanksgiving. Also going to have some unknown facts regarding the voyage and the settlement, so make sure you stick around until after the history. So the basic facts are really not too in dispute, that the Pilgrims were the ones who made the voyage on the Mayflower from Southampton, England in 1620, late 1620, were a religious group who were trying to escape religious persecution. So we can't talk about Thanksgiving without talking about immigration, and that's all this, what we're doing is we're celebrating the spirit of immigration and the courage that it took for immigrants to be able to leave their home country and start. This is really starting with it, where they didn't know if anyone was there or not. Of course, there were, thank goodness, so they would have all died. But that's jumping ahead in the story a bit. So they had spent some time while they were raising money in the Netherlands, and when they had enough money, they were able to charter a ship called the Mayflower, which was only one of about 26 Mayflowers. So late in 1620, they were able to set sail from Southampton, England, and cross the North Atlantic and land a month or two later in modern-day Massachusetts. They were right off the coast of Cape Cod, which is where they anchored and stayed. Now, anyone who's familiar with the northeast of the United States knows how brutally cold it is, and the winters are pretty unforgiving, especially being that far north. So about half of the crew and the Pilgrims actually died during that first winter of 1620 and 1621. So we know it's historically accepted that through the help of the Native Americans who been living in that part of North America for several thousand years or more, that they were able to help them survive and start to grow crops and be able to thrive. And that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving here in the United States. But an unknown fact about the Pilgrims is, if without these facts, I would not be here to do this video. Probably there would be about 1 million other people that wouldn't have had the opportunity to have been born if it was not for a barrel maker and a carpenter named John Alden. And John Alden was a crew member, so there is no historical certainty as to John Alden's heritage, where he came from. They don't know, they can't agree on that. But thank goodness he was hired on. He was in Southampton at the time, and he was hired on to make that voyage, because John Alden turned out to be my 10th great-grandfather. And I'll get into the connection in a second. So he was a crew member, he wasn't a pilgrim. So how did he become my 10th great-grandfather? Well, of the 45 people who initially died that first winter in 1621, in fact, the week of February 21st through the 28th, Priscilla Mullins, who wound up marrying John Alden, becoming my 10th great-grandmother, she lost all the family she had with her. So there were 3 members of her family that died. So, but it just so happens that Priscilla Mullins' whole family that came with her on the trip, they all perished in February of 1621. Being stuck on a ship under those conditions at that time, it's a miracle they didn't all die. But her parents were William Mullins and Alice Atwood, and also her brother, her younger brother, passed away, Joseph Mullins. And so John Mullins and Alice Atwood are actually my 11th great-grandparents. And so if John Alden had not gotten on that ship as a worker and taken that voyage, I would not be here, and the descendants is probably 1 million descendants at this particular point, being that they're 10th great-grandparents. A lot of us would not be here. They had a daughter, see this is, and I'll give you kind of lineage now. They had a daughter named Ruth who married John Bass, and it turns out that their daughter, Hannah, turned out to be the grandmother of the second United States President, John Adams. But it was her sister Mary Bass that is my direct line. Mary Bass wound up marrying William Copeland. William Copeland and Mary Bass's son, David Copeland, married Elizabeth Bent. It was about this time that the Copelands moved from Massachusetts to Maine. We'll eventually get to Thompson, which is important to this particular story. Rachel Copeland married these ducks. Rachel Copeland married David Vose. This is where it really gets close to my line. So it's here that David Vose had a son named Seth Vose, and that they were now in Thomaston, Maine, which is in Knox County, real near the coast and really, really nice area. It's there that they had a daughter. well, Seth Vos got married to Alice Robinson Fales, and it's their daughter, who is Alice Vos, that married Daniel Mayo of Thomaston, Maine. Their daughter is Evelyn Mayo, who happens to be my great-great-grandmother, who then married a nice Irish boy named Donald MacDonald. So I won't do a deep dive on the history of Thomaston, Maine in this video. That's not what this video is about. Just about the history of some of the basic history of why we celebrate Thanksgiving. That's a celebration of immigrants, and how, if it wasn't for that particular voyage, because I have a lot to celebrate there, I would not exist if it wasn't for that carpenter named John Alden, who decided to work on that particular ship at that particular time in history, enabling it possible. That's what I was talking about. It's so fascinating about these decisions. If John Alden had kept on going, if he went on a different Mayflower, if he went on a different ship, or if he didn't go on a ship at all, but this mysterious man who wound up helping run the Massachusetts Bay Colony, who was a signer to the Mayflower Compact and was the longest surviving signer of the Mayflower Compact. If it wasn't for this obscure man in history, that we don't know who his parents are, we don't know his history, but what we know for certain is that he made it possible for people like me and probably a million other people to actually have the opportunity to be born. I think that's fascinating. I don't know what the odds are, something like that happening, but it's pretty impressive. It's awesome to think that these choices that people made 400 years ago, how it changed not just the course of history in a grand scale, but it changed the course of history in my particular family. So that's just a little bit of history about why we celebrate Thanksgiving, why we should celebrate immigration, and why the choices that they made throughout history, and it wasn't such a, not just that it's a momentous event in world history, but it's actually even more important to someone like me, because I wouldn't exist if those people did not choose to have taken that voyage, and if John Alden had not chosen to work. It was just a job of this guy, but it changed the course of history, and certainly changed the course of history for my particular family. Thanks for watching, and if you have family that was also on the Mayflower and you're a descendant, please leave that in the comments. I'd love to see that. And as always, thanks for watching Epic Genealogy.